don't have much time here on this earth. We need to honor our life and our consciousness by doing big things. For the next 100 years, I want to do something that's going to make a major seismic shift in the world, in the consciousness. I want to put content out that enlightens people. New point of view. You start thinking. Next stage, empowerment. You can start moving. You can turn off the news. You can think differently. But then you might need help transforming, and that's where the Academy is going to come in. I want you to change. I know you're probably not going to do it on your own, so I'm going to get you across that goal line, kicking and screaming. That's what London Real is about these days. And 100 years now, 1,000 years from now, we'll look back to these days of savageness when we weren't treating each other right and our bodies right and all of these things, and we'll think, wow, look how much we've evolved. London Real, it's a place where I can go and I can put myself to the test. We're on a mission from God, and so we're unstoppable because we know we are doing the right thing. This week on the show, we have me. Yes, every year I put myself in the guest chair of London Real and talk about the state of the union, the future of London Real. I both love and hate this episode. Luckily, I was able to have Roger Brooks, the founder of American Real, come from New York in order to interview me. He's a recent graduate of our Broadcast Yourself course, and he is one of the many reels from around the world that we've inspired that's doing incredible things. So I was so excited to have him there. And he put me on the spot and said, Brian, what's next? And I outlined my 100-year plan for London Real, and also some of the specific things I want to do in the next 5 years, which are the 20 documentary films we're going to make, the 100,000 students that graduate from the London Real Academy. And he went even deeper. Some of my favorite guests, some of my morning routines, how I balance my work and life and the family, how I motivate our team. And of course, this is the very last interview that will happen in London Real Studios. We're shutting down the studios and going to our brand new London Real World Headquarters. So excited. So this is the last time you'll ever see that floor and see everything, but don't worry. The new space is even better than ever, and I'm super excited to show you that. It's what's going to help us scale and take us to the next level. So if you want to be inspired, if you ever wanted to create something that's yours, to create a mission or a movement or a team or a business, there's lots of gold in here. It's quite long. I think we spoke for over 4 hours, so there's lots of good stuff in there. And I talk about everything I learned in the last 6 years and how I've been able to be so fortunate to build this thing called London Real with all of your support. So thank you so much for making this happen, and hopefully you'll see me next year talking about the future from there. And the future inside London Real Academy is even brighter. Our brand new course, Speak to Inspire, is out now. We'll be closing it very soon, and I'll be taking a small group of people from around the world who want to accelerate their public speaking skills. This could be for the stage, for the boardroom with clients, or in a social situation, anytime when you need to magnify your message to get people moving in the right direction. And I've learned from some of the greats, from Dan Pena to Ido Portal to Simon Sinek. These people know how to speak to inspire, and I'm going to be teaching you how to do it, but more importantly, I'm going to be holding you accountable to do the work so you will be a better person, a better speaker, a better communicator, and a better person that can really move the world the way that you want them to. So join us on this. It's an incredible time. Speak to Inspire. And now I leave you with me. Sit down and plug in with Roger Brooks and Brian Rose, and I hope you enjoy it.
Welcome to American Real. This is Roger Brooks, broadcasting from the London Real Studios in London, England. Today, my very special guest is Brian Rose, founder and host of London Real. Originally from California, you hold a mechanical engineering degree from MIT, then worked on Wall Street as a trader before moving to England some 13 years ago. After much success as a banker, you had an epiphany before relinquishing the corporate life, followed by the passion to create London Real. Brian, I am honored to be sitting in your marvelous chair. And before we get started, I want to thank you for this opportunity. I am a living testimonial of your hard work, and welcome to my show from your studio.
Thank you so much, Roger. It's a pleasure being on the American Real version of London Real. And for people that don't know much about you, first of all, this is the very first time we've officially met, which actually isn't very fair because we probably met years and years ago when you were watching episodes of London Real, and even a few months ago when I started teaching our Broadcast Yourself course to you, and so I feel like I know you really well.
Oh, the feeling is mutual.
And you've done amazing work with your show, and every year I decide to put myself in this hot seat and let myself be on the firing line, and I choose someone to do it. It started off first with Sully Breaks, the spoken word artist. That was 4 years ago, I think. Then it was Olive from New York Real after that, and last year was Alexander Ziri, our head of product. And this year we were like, who could it be? Everyone on my team ran the other way when I said who wants to actually sit down and have a conversation with me. And I think I was meditating one morning and it was like, Roger's the guy.
Thank you.
And we had 60 some people from around the world taking our Broadcast Yourself course, which is inside London Real Academy. We teach them how to create a world-class podcast from scratch. And you were just doing amazing work. You have an incredible video studio, but really you have the ethos that is a lot like the London Real ethos. You're putting out great content because it needs to be out there. Your tagline is everyone has a story, and you really put heart and soul into every one of your episodes, and you do it for the right reasons. It's not about Roger, it's about the bigger picture, and I think that makes you unique and super powerful. And when I first heard there was an American Real, I said, you can't do that. I always said, someone one time said I want to do Ireland Real and Australia Real, and my policy early on, ever since I was on the Joe Rogan Experience 5 years ago when I put out the offer, anybody can start their own reel, I had a policy, no continents or countries, give me a city. And so I always said no to Ireland Real and all these other ones. But when I heard the American Real, I was like, Roger, you can't do that. But once I saw what you were doing and what you put into your shows, it's okay by me.
Thank you.
So great having you here.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. And look, it's my first time to London, and wow, what an incredible city. The vibe here, I can't think, it's between New York and something else, but it's so unique and marvelous.
It's a special city. I love this city so much, I named my show after it.
Yeah.
And there's something about me and the city that click. They just click. I'm from San Diego, grew up on the beach, but I never really was a surfer. I went to New York City. I was on Wall Street. I was there trying to do my best, but New York City always kicked my butt on a regular basis. I just couldn't figure it out. But when I came to London in '97, I had success. When I came back in '02, I had success. I was always able to figure it out over here, maybe because I was the immigrant, I was the American hustler. Mm-hmm. And something about me in this city, they just mesh. And so why fight it? I just was like, this is the place I want to be. And literally when I went to create this show 6 years ago, I was always fascinated by these companies that had used London in their name. The London School of Sound, where I learned how to be a DJ. The London Sleep Institute. The London this. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to call my show London something. And I'm so glad I did. And London Real is the essence of what we do here, and it's such a powerful name. London's such a powerful brand. I'd like to think we represent it very, very well. And I'm so glad you feel the vibes of my city. This city's amazing. When I got here in '97, it wasn't as amazing. The food wasn't as good. It wasn't as multicultural. But now, honestly, it's almost like a child that's growing up. Like I got here when London was about 10, still figuring things out, didn't really know what was going on. Now London's in its teens and early 20s, and it's maturing. It's a force, And in the next 10 years, if not now, this is the greatest city in the world.
No doubt.
I'll put it against New York City any day of the week and any other major city. It's truly international. You can walk down the street, you can hear Russian, Chinese, you can see a woman walking in a full hijab down the street, no problem. And people really embrace the internationalness of this place. And it's the center of commerce, the center of finance, center of government, center of media for pretty much all of Europe.
Right.
And I love it, man. I'm not going anywhere.
So what ultimately attracted you to move here?
It was necessity. So I got here in '97. I was in my 20s. I think I was probably 26 or 27, I guess it would have been. And look, I was in Wall Street. I was young. I was single. I was hanging out with all my Wall Street buddies. We were going out every single night of the week. I think when I moved to Wall Street, back from Chicago, I went out with my good friend 28 nights in a row. And we were all about the bucks. We would love Gordon Gekko. We would literally leave the bar sometimes at 1 or 2 in the morning to go home and watch Wall Street. Like, that's how obsessed we were. We did that probably 50 times. And so for us, you could have offered me a job on the third moon of Saturn. And if it paid me enough money, I would have taken it. So when someone said, you want to go to London? I was like, yeah, show me the money. And so that's why I came originally, because it was about a business opportunity and I would have gone anywhere. Which in retrospect, I look back at that guy and I'm like, come on, Brian, maybe it shouldn't have been about you, but when you're young, maybe that's okay. And it brought me here, so that was okay. So that's why I came. I remember July 5th, 1997, I landed. I think Tony Blair had just won the election. I was in some hotel that looked funny and smelled funny, and the room service had like bacon with all this fat on it, and I didn't know where I was. I knew nobody here. I was very lonely in the beginning. It was hard to be here, but it grew on me slowly.
I could see why. Well, you mentioned Wall Street, and I do want to talk about that a little bit. But
okay.
First, I'm just curious, was the experience there like The Wolf of Wall Street? Were you Leonardo DiCaprio?
So The Wolf of Wall Street is, look, Scorsese's an amazing director, and Leonardo's a great actor. But I didn't like the movie, because that movie depicts kind of like a bucket shop selling penny stocks that was barely in Manhattan. It started off, I think, in the movie in Queens, and then they kind of moved in. And they're selling shares on the phone to people that really don't know what the hell they're doing. So that was kind of like a bucket shop, right? What I was doing was I was in a major global institution on the phone, creating derivative transactions between some of the biggest players in the world. So it was just a different level. It was kind of a more grown-up level. There was a lot more money involved, and it was just like for the big boys. So when I see that, I kind of laugh, and I'm like, all right, but for me, I don't know that reality. I kind of know a little more of the Gordon Gekko reality, although he was an M&A guy. He was a churn and burn guy from the 80s and 90s, and I was a derivatives guy from, I guess, the later 90s. So it was different, but being on Wall Street for me was just absolutely amazing. I was like a kid in a candy shop. I'd gone to MIT to get an engineering degree, and I just fell out of love with engineering. I worked for Ford Motor Company one summer, and at first, my first car was a Ford Mustang. I was 16 years old. I bought it for $1,200. I saved all summer. I worked on it. I used to have dirt underneath my nails at all times, to where my stepmother would say, I'm not serving you dinner unless you wash your fingers. I would work on that car all the time. So when I went to MIT and I got a job there, my first summer, it was like I died and went to heaven. But I looked around after 2 months and I said, look at these guys. They're 50. They're probably, they're just not going anywhere. And they were, I don't know, for me, they were making $50,000 a year, and they're there, and they're happy, and there's 120,000 engineers in Dearborn, Michigan, and I don't want to be one of them. And so I just got a little bit jaded of the professional side of engineering. I love science, I love engineering, I love thermodynamics and dynamics, I love all that. But as a job, for me, it just didn't seem to scale. And so finance was interesting to me. My grandpa, Benedict, was a horse trader, a very good businessman. My grandpa, Rose, was a farmer who built a great farm and a great business, so it's in my blood, maybe. And finance is fascinating when you're an engineer, because you can plot these things and price options and trade them. And for me, I was like a kid in a candy shop. So at my fraternity, the Wall Street Journal would show up every morning on the door. It was weird. A lot of the guys thought I was strange, but I was reading the Wall Street Journal, which was really boring to read back then. And I went to Wall Street, got a job at Bankers Trust as a derivatives trader, lived in the East Village, and I was just living this dream. And I was on this trading floor with like 300 people on it. It was like the size of a football field. no walls, screaming people. They gave me 2 of these black phones. One was connected to the Chicago Board of Trade. One was connected to the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. Others connected to U.S. Treasury bond salesmen. And they were like, go. And they let me start buying and selling things on like day 3. It was crazy. And it was amazing. And I loved it. So that was my Wall Street experience.
Talk about pressure, right? That must have really prepared you for the pressure of today.
Very much so. So when that's happening and someone's screaming over your back and says, I need you to price this 5-year swap to these dates. It's Fujitomo Bank is on the line. They got 4 other banks on the line. What's the price? And I'm sitting there plugging all these things and I'm literally calculating this on a spreadsheet. And I have to quote a number like 4.7432. And that's a percentage rate. And I have to know that means there's 3360, assuming 30 days in a month and 360 days in a year, even though there's not. And I have to know that that's paying quarterly, not annually, because that can screw it up. And if I'm off by one number, that could be like $100,000 down. If I'm off by another number, it could be $2 million down. And guess what? If I'm wrong in their favor, I'll get the deal. And so you learn really quickly how to deal with pressure and also how to prioritize. Mm-hmm. It's like, is this important right now? No, that's not important. Is this important? And you just try to focus and breathe, and then so there's a lot of that going on. And as a young guy, people are yelling at you a lot. So it's a great place to learn how to be calm. So when big problems happen here, I'd like to think that I can just kind of, okay, what do we have to do to solve the problem? Because every minute you panic, the market goes the other way and you're losing more money. So sometimes you have to just do that. And sometimes you have to take decisive action and cut your losses. Right. Another thing Wall Street taught me, don't be emotional about stock. Don't be emotional about business. Don't be emotional about guests. Sometimes you have to just cut your losses, right. Move on to the next. Right. So yeah, it was great in that sense.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So Brian, if you can, take us back to Southern California when you were growing up. I know you mentioned your grandpa was a farmer. But what were the early days like for you? What were your interests? What was it like growing up in SoCal?
No, great question. I mean, people always say, why are you in London? I come from San Diego, California, even Pacific Beach, and my mom lives in La Jolla, which is some of the most beautiful places in the world. I think it's the most temperate city in America, like year round. I think it has the best climate, bar none. There's no humidity. Right. I don't remember it snowing ever. And so people always ask me, why am I not there? So it's a great question, but also it doesn't have history and culture and also I think I love the urban experience as well. That's why I went to school in Boston. And so, look, growing up was great. It was amazing. I lived in a very quiet, residential area in San Diego. My dad was an engineer. My mom was a former school teacher, but she stayed at home. I have a brother and a sister. So really good upbringing. It was a clean upbringing. Mm-hmm. I didn't see anything weird or bad until I got to college, really. And I think there's something good about that. I never saw like a drug addict on the corner, or I never saw weird stuff. It was just like a kind of a clean upbringing. I think that was good. Both of my parents came from strong family backgrounds. Arizona, born and raised, creating farms from nothing. When I went to visit my grandma before she died, she drove me by a field and she said, this is where your grandpa and I had our first farm. And she said, he spent 2 years pulling the stumps out of the ground before he planted the crops. And I was just like, okay, that's what I come from. Yeah. It's all, and so in my family, it was always, nobody ever complained. There's no complaining on a farm. You just get to it. So I think I had a lot of really good values from my dad and my mom. And they still impress me to this day. They do it by example. They don't necessarily tell me what to do. So look, great childhood. When I was 7, they got divorced. I think it really rocked my world. As a young man, I think I directed my anger towards that. And it's not fair on them by any means, but it definitely affected me. Mm-hmm. And I think I got very jaded with nuclear families. And I think I was told at that point that I was on my own in this world and I needed to be very self-reliant. And I think I took that to the nth degree mm-hmm. In my life. But as I look back now, I think it had a lot to do with it. And in my ayahuasca experiences from a few years ago, I went back and confronted that kind of hurt boy and kind of told him he needs to open up a bit more. Mm-hmm. So that's something I have to remind myself of constantly. Open up to people. Let them into your heart, which means they can hurt you. But that's the only way you're going to have these amazing connections in human relationships, which is what I think life is actually all about. It's about connecting. It's about helping each other. It's about realizing we're all in this together. And so I always have to remind myself to just open my heart a little bit, because my old tendency was to close it off. It's Brian against the world, and he's going to be in here and you can't hurt him. So I think that experience definitely changed me. But yeah, that's San Diego in a nutshell. I wanted to get the hell out of there as soon as I could, and I went literally as far away as possible to MIT in Boston. It's like a 4.5 hour flight. So I could have gone to Maine,
right,
but that was about as far as I could go.
Right. So then you go through school, you go to Wall Street. We're going to fast forward a little bit, and then you're at Richard Branson's chalet in Switzerland. Tell us about the epiphany.
Yeah, so you're making a reference to my TED Talk, which I start off and say, there I was at Richard Branson's chalet. It's in a town called Verbier in Switzerland. And if you've never been to Europe or Switzerland, it's a beautiful country. There's just mountains everywhere. My brother actually lives there now with my nieces and nephews, and it's just stunning. It's gorgeous. And every year I would go with my company here in London called ICAP, which has now moved on to NEX. I think they merged, but it was a huge interdealer broker, and all of my big clients we would take there. So Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, all of the big names, Citibank, you name it. Every bank you've ever heard of, we would take for our big ski-do, right? And it's, all expensive paid. We take everyone there, and it's just like an amazing time. And we go every year. And so I started my TED Talk talking about, there I am, Richard Branson's chalet, après ski. I think we'd just gone helicopter skiing, right? We're hanging out. There's the hot tub. We're drinking champagne. We're planning our night. What restaurant we're gonna go to. There's 2 clubs there. You either go to the farm club or you go to the other club in Verbier. We're like, where are we gonna go, guys? And I'm looking around and I realize, I'm surrounded by all these people and I feel so alone inside, because these weren't my friends. I didn't feel connected to them. I didn't feel connected to my work. I was just banking money for Brian. And I had gotten to the end of that rope, and I realized that every 3 months I got paid a bonus, and every 3 months I didn't feel happier. And I had finally realized, wait a second, there's no correlation here. And I had told myself for 40 years there was a correlation. When you get rich, you'll be happy and you win at the game of life. That's what I was taught in my mind, maybe from the American media, or maybe that was my own twisted version of it. But that's what I was taught. And I have a horrible habit, as you can see with London Real, of not giving up, right? So I will take something to the grave sometimes, to my detriment. And it's got me through some hard times at London Real. But it also, I think I stayed too long in the city of London, maybe 5 years too long. And I kept beating my head against the wall, waiting for that payout of, where's my happiness? And that was an epiphany. I looked around, and this is a dream moment for most people, right? I mean, you're in this beautiful place. Sure. You're financially secure. I have a LinkedIn profile that makes me look like the greatest guy in the world. You look at my pictures on my Facebook, and I'm driving around in Lamborghinis, and I'm flying here and flying there. And yet, I'm surrounded in the room with these traders, and they're not bad guys, but I have no connection with them. I have no connection with my work. Therefore, I have no connection with myself, and I have no connection with really any other human being in the world. Maybe my girlfriend. That's about it. But I don't even love myself, and I'm not contributing to humanity. And I was just like, this is horrible. And a friend of mine texted me, and he said, how's the ski? And I wrote back, and I said, I've never been surrounded by so many people and felt so alone. And that was one of the signs that I actually listened to. And it was a matter of months, I think, that I walked out of the job and just left it all behind. And I was actually there about a week ago. The CEO invited me to come for a boardroom dinner, and I was there with a member of parliament. I was there with one of the high-ranking generals. I was there with one of the highest guys in the Financial Times. And he puts together these meeting of the minds. And I don't know why he invited me, but I was there, and it was really weird, Roger, because I had to walk into this place that I spent 9 years, and it was weird. But when I left that day, I didn't miss it. I was so glad I got out of there, So, yeah, hope that answers your question.
No, it does, it does. And I guess, what lessons did you learn from those days?
It's a great question. And when I left Wall Street, when I left the city of London, which is what we call Wall Street here, city is the square mile where it used to be the walled city of London. You can see the walls as you walk around. London Wall is right down the street here. You might have seen it. Yeah. And that's where most of the financial district is. So if you say he's a city boy, that's the bankers kind of guys. And so when I left that area, I think I took all of that disappointment and letdown from money, and I turned it the other way. And I said, I don't want anything to do with money. And I ran straight away from it. And I said, bankers are horrible people and capitalists are horrible people, and I'm just gonna grow my facial hair and I'm gonna wear my cargo pants and I'm gonna do something different. And I think I went probably too far. And because when I look back, I learned a lot of valuable lessons from these places. And now I tell guys, look, if you want to go spend some years in banking, go for it. It'll show you how to be a professional. It'll show you how to hustle. It'll show you how to really work with high-level people. And I think the banking industry, for the most part, does great things. Efficient capital markets build the world. I really believe that. There's also a lot of people that just want to make money. But I think there's a lot of opportunities. So I'm very grateful for what it did. It also gave me a base of capital that I could use to build London Real. Yeah. So London Real, with its ayahuasca and its Bruce Liptons of the world and its Ido Portals, all of that is being financed by the greatest banks in the world. Yeah. So thank you, Goldman Sachs. Thank you, JP Morgan, for financing our research in psychedelics, our research in the fact that the body is the mind, our research in exploring human beings. Because without that, I couldn't have built London Real. So in retrospect, as Steve Jobs said, when you look back, you can connect all the dots. And going forward, I couldn't connect them, right? Why am I here? But it really gave me a beautiful thing, and I really respect the people that employed me. And I worked for the same company for 9 years, and Michael Spencer, the CEO, he ran and still runs an amazing company, and I'm thankful for him. But no longer do my values align with theirs, so I would never go back. Yeah.
Now let's talk about the journey of London Real. I think that's a nice segue into how it all began. The hard work, the team, everything that you did to build what it is today.
This is a strange time right now, Roger. You caught us at like the perfect time because we are approaching our 6-year anniversary. I think that episode was published October something, 2011. It was like 11th or 21st, I can't remember. It was in the same room, just about 10 feet to our left. And that was episode number 1. There was no lighting. There was 2 cameras, maybe 3. There was no script. We didn't know what was going on. But I knew it should be on video. That was the one thing I knew. And
How?
Well, because I always loved making videos, Roger. And if you look back when I was 10 years old, yeah. I got these crazy videos. My mom, she had divorced from my dad and she had become a saleswoman and she was pretty good at it. And one Christmas she brought home a video camera. And it was the old kind where you had to actually...
VHS.
You had the VHS and you had the VHS tape thing that you had to have slung across your shoulder, and then you had the thing, and I used to go around and we would take it to my grandpa's ranch and we would make these shoot 'em out films with me and my cousins. And if you look back, I'm like the director and I'm telling people what to do. I'm a little micromanaging bastard, just like I am today. And my whole crew will tell you that's true here. And I'm like, all right, can you do this? Can you do this? And I was trying to make movies. I had no training. So it's funny how I'm coming back to the things I loved doing as a kid. And then when I was a trader, every year here, or when I was a broker here in London, every year, in order to make it through the year of boredom and hate with my job, I would choose something new to do. And so about 2 years before I left the city, I took a film school course, part-time, and I made a short film, martial arts film. It's online. I think it's amazing. Not everyone agrees. Mariana's in it. I save her. It's very Bruce Lee. And so I learned a good amount about film. I learned more than I thought. I learned about blocking, directing, editing. So it was a really good base. And I'd also played with YouTube a little bit, even 10 years ago. I think there's a video of me riding an elephant in Africa on YouTube from like 2007. So I knew the platform, and I just knew in my heart that a podcast, which I think I created at the time, needed to have video for a connection. So that was super important. So yeah, you've caught me 6 years later in the same room, and in 2 weeks, this studio is gone. I'm gonna leave a lot of memories behind. This room right here, I don't believe in energy, but I do believe in energy. And there's so much energy in this room, Roger. I mean, you've felt it by watching the shows, but this is the same room that Elliot Holst jumped up and down and said, we communicate with our bodies. Right. This is the same room where, Chris Eubank got up and started shadow boxing. I thought he was gonna punch me in the ribs and break my ribs. This is the same room where I had the epic conversation with Dorian Yates. This is the same room where I had 2 epic conversations with Ido Portal that led to our film go with him. I mean, I've had 400 conversations. Something great has happened here, and it's super special. And so this is a point where we're moving into our brand new world headquarters, and we're expanding. The academy's expanding. So it's this weird point you caught me where I'm looking back, which I rarely do, and also looking forward, to the next 100 years, which I'll talk about later. But I think I probably didn't answer your question. You probably wanted to know about the genesis, maybe.
I do.
So, I told you I had that epiphany in Switzerland, and I walked out of the city, months later, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I remember I was scared that day I walked out, but I had to go. I just knew I had to go, and I didn't know what I was going to do next. And I spent 6 months screwing around, not knowing what to do. I knew I didn't want to do certain things. I could have gone into technology, but I remember I told my dad, I said, Dad, I don't want to go back to my high school graduation and tell people about my $1 billion tech IPO. I just don't care. I'm not that guy anymore. So what do I want to do? I don't know. And I was listening to Joe Rogan, and he had this video podcast, right? And I was watching these conversations, and I remember just feeling, wow, there are these three guys having these real conversations, and the end of it would go and he'd play his tune, and I'd be like, wow, I just felt so whole and complete. And I joked to my dad, I said, Dad, you should start a podcast. And he said, what are you talking about? And I think that was the seed. And so, on October 6 years ago, I decided that I would start broadcasting, and I was having these long walks in London at the time with my jiu-jitsu instructor, and he was the only other guy like me that was unemployed, and we were having these great conversations, and I just, obviously, the stars were aligning, and I thought, you know what, let's do this. And so I just pulled the trigger, and when I get a project in my teeth, look out, because I am relentless. I am obsessive, and that's what happened with London Real. And so 6 years ago that happened, Roger, and the rest is kind of history.
Yeah. Oh, I could see that, and I saw that really well the last 8 weeks. It's been quite a journey for myself and the others in the class that we went through that.
Yeah, because you've seen inside the London Real Academy, and so the Broadcast Yourself course is what you're talking about. Yes. 8 weeks ago, you started the course with about 60 some people. About 20 of them are here in London for graduation this weekend, and so you've seen what it's like to be inside the academy, which didn't exist until 2.5 years ago, and to see when we teach something how hard we go. Right. And it's 8 weeks, it's intense, it's 16 hours of live calls, there's video modules, there's homework, there's nowhere to hide. Some people can't take it, but the people that get through it, they become just almost supercharged. And like you were one of the ones that you were already doing amazing work on your own, and we can talk about later, but you probably felt the people that make it through, they get just hopefully catapulted out the other side. They feel energy, they're part of the family now. I'm going to know you the rest of my life, I believe. Absolutely. And so, yeah, that's that experience that you had a part of. So you can kind of see inside, and you can see the team. The team we have here, I would put this team up against any company in the world. I tell you time and time again, this team impresses me beyond anything, and my expectations are high. In fact, when we launch a product or we launch a documentary film, what impresses me the most are the way my team behaves. And that's what I tell them the next day. I'm like, what impressed me more than the Ido Portal documentary was you. What impressed me more than the Broadcast Yourself course or our recent Business Accelerator launch was the way the team puts in the work and they go the extra mile. I'm just really impressed.
And that's so important. You cannot do your job without that team behind you, and we both know that.
Yeah, I did this solo for 3 or 4 years, 3 years probably. And my dad, I remember, told me one time, I guess I'm making a lot of references to my dad and my mom, and he said, Brian, because he's an entrepreneur, he's a startup guy, a tech guy. He said, the most work that one person can do is the work of 2 people, if you stretch it. And what he was saying was, if you really want to scale your idea and scale your organization and affect more people, let alone make more money, that's a whole nother side effect. You need a team. And in order to do that, you need to learn how to manage them. I never managed people in the city. I didn't have to.
Right.
To make a lot of money, you don't have to do that in the city, and I always stayed away from it because I didn't like it. It was fearful for me. London Real, I was forced to embrace this role as a team leader, and it's hard, and it's rewarding, and I'm learning, and I love it.
Great. Let's talk about your core mission. Is your mission different today than when you started? And if so, how?
Very much so. I had a mission when we started. If you look back, I actually have a mission statement that we wrote out, and it sounds kind of funny, and putting the BBC out of business, and we reject the status quo, we reject mainstream media.
Yeah.
And I never liked the mission statement, but when I look back at it now, I could see where we were going. We wanted to put out media with people having real conversations about real things, and no longer have a 3-minute video on Channel 4 that gets someone to say a soundbite. Right. We want to really have these conversations. I didn't know why. And I've realized, though, that you need this long-form conversation because it's the ultimate original form of education, storytelling.
Yes.
That's how we learn. We learn by hearing about Brian's journey, Dorian's journey, Ito's journey, Dan Pena's journey. And if you understand the story, it locks into your brain. And the Bible knew this, right?
Yes.
How does the Bible teach you? Through story. And so it's the original form. It's not YouTube. It's not 60-second Instagram videos. And so that's how you really teach the lessons, the core lessons. I call it the art of listening. If you sit down for one of my shows, what do you have to do? You have to check your ego at the door, because I'm about to introduce you to a scientist who says that DNA isn't what you thought it was. I'm about to introduce you to a guy who says you know nothing about how the body moves, and I'm going to teach you. I'm going to sit you down with a guy who's 72 years old, lives in a castle in Scotland, and likes to yell and use 4-letter words. You have to put your ego in check because you have to go into their brain for the next 90 minutes or 2 hours. And you have to be willing to surrender your own judgment, your own preconceived notions, and allow another human into your brain. It's very intimate. But by doing that, that's how you evolve. And that's honestly how a lot of psychedelics work as well. It allows you have to let someone else in your brain for a while and accept another point of view. So that's what we were doing from the get-go. But I couldn't articulate it very well. Now I'm a little better at articulating. Come back in 5 years, hopefully I'll be a little bit better. But we were just trying to get this whole idea of art of listening, real connection, human stories, empathy, learning in a traditional way. Also rejecting the mainstream media, rejecting all the things that we've been told we have to think. Laws, constructs of our society, why do we have to do them? Why? Why are psychedelics illegal? Why is our government right? Why is privacy important? Why is human energy something we should talk about? All these things that have come up on London Real a lot. Why should we talk about those things? So that's what we were about from the beginning. I couldn't articulate it as well, but now I have a better vision of it. And so I think we are about this art of listening. And that's what I think any show, long form, is doing, your show as well. And so for the next 100 years, I have a mission. And the reason I'm choosing the 100 years is because I love the city of Barcelona. Have you ever been?
Absolutely. Love it.
Well, I went there originally, I think 4 years ago, maybe 6 years ago with my girls before the boys were born. So that's Mariana and my stepdaughter, Gabby. And we had a wonderful time, and there was this church called La Sagrada Familia.
Beautiful.
And it was built by Gaudí, which is one of their favorite architects in that city. And when I learned more about it, I said, what's going on with this guy? He started building this church, and
not finished.
It's still not finished.
Right.
And it's going to be finished in about 100 years, I think. And he knew it would never be finished in his lifetime, and he was taking his sweet time to build it. Just so people know, and you should research this, he was able to build one wall of the 4 walls of the church in his lifetime, barely. And that was okay with him. And he always used to say, my investor is not in a rush. And he was referring to God. And I don't necessarily believe in God, but maybe I do, because my investor is not in a rush either. And so I'm on a 100-year plan here. And that way, London Real is beyond me and my lifetime. I'm out there to change the world through what we're doing here. I don't want to do anything else. I don't want to go back to the city. I want to keep doing what we're doing here. Now, it doesn't mean I want to keep having conversations with people in this studio every week. It expands. That's why we're doing documentary movies. That's why the London Real Academy is growing. And who knows what's going to happen a year from now. I always tell the guys and the women that work here, I don't want to recognize London Real 12 months from now. That's hard.
Yeah.
I don't want to even recognize it. To be honest, I don't recognize it now. I would have never thought we're moving into this new space. I would have never thought we would have had coming up on 3 documentary films. I would have never thought what we're doing inside the Academy. So that's what I want in the next year. But for the next 100 years, I want to do something that's going to make a major seismic shift in the world, in the consciousness. I want to change people's lives, and I want to do 3 main things. I want to put content out that it enlightens people. When you first get your first touch point of London Real, let's be honest, it's probably on YouTube. It probably comes you out of the blue. You were searching something and bam, all of a sudden you're watching Dorian Yates. All of a sudden you're watching Ido Portal. All of a sudden you're watching Dan Pena. And you get some information. And I call it being enlightened, not educated. Education's boring. Enlightened, because they say something and you're like, wow, how come I've never heard of that before? I've watched 1,000 movies in my life. I went to MIT or Harvard. I've watched every single documentary film out there, but I missed that nugget of someone saying something real to me in that chair, and people have told me that that's changed their lives. And I used to think that was nonsense, Roger. Right. But I've seen people in the streets that stop me. I've probably been stopped by 1,000 people in the streets, and they said, Brian, that episode with Dan Pena changed my life. And I say, thank you so much, I gotta go. And they grab me and they're like, Brian, it changed my life. I made a major life decision because of you. And so I realized that first touch point is about enlightenment. That's when someone goes, wow, I never thought of that idea. But that was the first iteration of London Real. We did a lot of enlightening, and that's great, but I hate that then they went on to another YouTube video, and another YouTube video, and then they went back to their same horrible, disempowering lives. So there's another step, and that is empowerment. When you watch a London Real episode, you hear someone say something, but it's not like a cute picture on Instagram that makes you think, yeah, that's really inspiring. I want you to feel empowered. And that's why at the end of the show, I say, what are the lessons we can learn? What's the advice you give to your 20-year-old self? What action can people take right now and change their lives? Take some responsibility. Take extreme ownership, as my good friend Jocko Willink would say, the Navy SEAL. And that's the second stage. We want people to be empowered, make change in your life. And then comes the final stage, which is transformation. That is what we do inside London Real Academy. And you felt that over the last 8 weeks. And that's when we go all in. And I put my blood, sweat, and tears. It's personal for me. When I'm on those live calls, when I'm teaching those students, I want you to change. I want you to change the world. That's what we're doing here. And so that's when you transform. And it really is like going from, that caterpillar into a butterfly. Like, I want you to make change. I know you're probably not gonna do it on your own, so I'm gonna get you across that goal line, kicking and screaming, and I'm gonna watch it happen right in front of our eyes. And so that's what London Real is about these days. First touch point, you get enlightened. New point of view. You start thinking, you talk to your friends about it. Okay, that's cool. Next stage, empowerment. You take some action. You can do all that on your own. You don't need our academy. You can do your morning routine. You can start moving. You can think differently. You can turn off the news. You can turn off, all that mainstream media. You can start working on your relationships. You can start taking extreme ownership. But then you might need help transforming. Then you come to us, and that's where the academy is going to come in. And my goal for the next 5 years is to graduate 100,000 members from our academy. And that is the plan. And so we've got some work to do, but we're going to do it. And that means really change people's lives. Because you're going to go on and you're going to affect probably millions of people, Roger. And hopefully you'll do it better through what we've helped you with. And then hopefully with even our further mentoring, you can do it as well. So that's where I see London Real in the next 100 years. Those 3 pillars of what we're doing here. And I just want to take them all to the next level. And I don't know where we're going. We're going to release 20 documentary films in the next 5 years. Like I said, we're going to graduate 100,000 members from the London Real Academy. We're going to continue to broadcast conversations like this. This is no longer a podcast. It stopped being a podcast a long time ago. And I don't know where else we're going. But I'm going to do things that feel right with the right people. I constantly, we constantly do projects with the right people. You were chosen today because you're the right person. You weren't hired. You didn't apply. I chose Dorian Yates to be our first documentary film. We chose Ido Portal. These are people that have good energy. We don't exchange money with these people. They say, yes, Brian, let's do this. And I think that says a lot about us, especially our last documentary with Ido Portal. I mean, this is a notoriously private guy. Look for footage of Ido training in one of his facilities online. Guess what? You're not going to find it because the only place it exists is in our movie because he doesn't trust anyone. And so he opened up his heart, he opened up his studio, he opened up his life for us because we built a relationship over 3 years of publishing his message, of keeping it by the books, of not doing any nonsense. And I really think that says a lot. And I had a lot of pressure putting this movie together. Ido brought his family to London. He had everyone there. He hadn't seen the movie yet. I mean, and this is his brand, this is his life, and he trusted us with his message. It meant so much to me and my director, Luis, and our entire team here at London Real. And after the show, I looked at Ito, and Ito's from Israel. And I don't know if you know people from Israel, but they are brutally frank.
Sure.
They will tell you if you smell bad. They will tell you if something's not good. And he actually had some criticism for the Dorian movie. He was like, yeah, Brian, it was good, but it could have been better. And I respect that about Ito. And afterwards, everyone was waiting. What are you going to say, Ito? What are you going to say? And it was the next day at the moving experience, because we did a 2-day moving experience. We were at lunch, and he looked at me and Luis, and he said, what are we doing next?
Wow.
And I never expected him to say that. And that was a special moment for us. So, I don't know where we're going, but we're going wherever we want and whatever feels right. And that's the future. So it's kind of known, but it's kind of unknown. And I'm so excited. I've never been at a better point in my life than now, and I'm super grateful for that. I never take that for granted. And I know it could end, or it could change, or I could have hard times, and I know that will come, but I feel great, and I'm grateful, and I want to capture this moment. I want to be thankful to all the people that made it happen, and I want to honor it, and I want to double down on it, and just create more things and greater things and change more people's lives. So.
Well, as you know, I, from the beginning, have got my inspiration from the show. It's the reason that I wanted to start a podcast in the first place. I stumbled upon an email that you had sent about the course, and just very grateful that it all came to be.
Continue watching this fascinating conversation for free by clicking on the link below to visit our website, and I'll see you on the inside.